to our series of interviews of pharmacy leaders. It is my pleasure to welcome retired Colonel John Grabenstein, right? Is that how I say it?
Stein like beer stein.
Bierstein. Okay, Grabenstein. And it's indeed a pleasure. It's significant because Colonel John, I'll call him Colonel John, is the recipient of the 2020 Remington Honor Medal, the highest award that APHA awards to someone in the profession. And a little bit of background on John. He's retired from as the Global Executive Director of Medical Affairs for Merck Vaccine. He's also the editor for Immunization Action Coalition. And really, I consider him a leader in many areas. When I was trying to identify different leaders, I consider him an innovator and entrepreneur. And even though he represents the military, he's obviously worked in military medicine, but he's really a leader in promoting public health and wellness through the immunization practice for pharmacists, by pharmacists. And you know, significant in that he wrote and developed the pharmacy-based immunization delivery program that many of our students complete as part of their degree requirements today. And I have to say, definitely a visionary. And I have to say, I was an early adopter of that certification program at Duquesne when I was still there in the late 90s, even before our Practice Act permitted pharmacists to immunize. I really believed that we needed to train pharmacists, and we did that. Not only for our PharmD students and our undergraduate students, but also for practitioners who wanted that certification, even though they couldn't practice that at the time. He's also led, and the latest is contributing to the APHA Lead 360 program, which is really to develop the affective domain of our curriculum. And it's always been my pleasure to watch John develop and grow and contribute to the profession. Because I can claim John as one of my first students when I taught at Duquesne University.
So there is my Duquesne pennant, right?
Ah, there it is. There it is. I joined the faculty at Duquesne, and I believe John was one of my first grad. I probably didn't have a lot of interaction, but I believe within the first year I taught there, or the second year, he was a student earning his bachelor's in pharmacy. So it's my pleasure to welcome John. I needed to share my screen, which I didn't do, but that's okay. John Grabenstein. So let me turn it over now, and I'll stop sharing, and we'll turn it over to John. And let me start off with the first question that I like to ask. Why don't you share with us a little bit about your journey to your position, and ultimately to becoming a leader in your area?
So when I was at Duquesne, I was paying for my tuition with an Army ROTC scholarship. And so I owed back the Army 4 years of service for them paying the tuition. Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, it wasn't just a job. It was really an exploration in leadership. You know, I owed 4 years of service, but I ended up staying 27 because they just kept giving me fantastic jobs, and you know, the scope and the leadership training that went along with it was exceptional. And I would kid people that, well, not kid, but I would go in, I'd be given a job of whatever magnitude, and once I got that well established and showed my competence, then I could go off and do all sorts of adventures. I was the director for a very small pharmacy, inpatient, outpatient, over in Germany. You know, got unit dose distribution started, got an IV admixture program started. And then I said, hey, I've got this special interest in vaccines. Would you credential me to prescribe the vaccines, to say, hey, you insulin user, you diabetic person, you need flu vaccine, you need pneumococcal vaccine. And so the chief of medicine agreed, and he signed off on my credentials, and I was prescribing vaccines in 1988. And so just, you know, each iteration went on sort of like that.
Mhm. Wow. Now I did not know, so that's interesting. And how was it? You had an interest in vaccine. Was there something? Obviously, often it's luck and opportunity. The environment. Was it? What explained
Serendipity.
vaccine?
Yeah. So my first job was at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, and I was the chief of pharmacy for one floor. There was a pharmacy on every floor, and of an inpatient service. And I did, I was responsible for one floor the first year, two floors the second year. The third year, a job came open for a clinical pharmacist in the allergy immunology clinic. And my predecessor in that role was interested in theophylline pharmacokinetics. Well, theophylline isn't used much anymore, I don't think.
That's correct.
But I got interested in the refrigerator in that clinic, where there was a great drug information need. It was the vaccines and antibodies refrigerator. And so that clinic gave all the flu shots to the adults, the troops, the retirees, the family members. And they were all lined up to get flu shots. I said, well, while we've got these people in line, let's see when their last tetanus booster was. How many of them have a chronic disease and need pneumococcal? How many of them need this, that, or the other thing? And so that was 1984, and it just, while you're doing one thing, do everything, and so we filled up their tanks with the vaccines they needed.
Wow, that's great. So the other thing, I asked folks to really share what they believe will be their legacy in 20 years. And sometimes people struggle with that because the legacy is often after one has expired in some respects. But you definitely have left a legacy. And maybe to rephrase the question is, what would you be most proud of in terms of your contributions to help advance the pharmacy profession? And I kind of could probably paraphrase that, but maybe share some comments in that regards.
Yeah, when you sent around the questions ahead of time, and I thought I have the great advantage of seeing that legacy now, because when I walk, no matter what state I'm in, no matter what city I'm in, I walk past a pharmacy, a community pharmacy, and I see "Get Vaccinated Here" signs. Mm-hmm. And, it's all over the country now. And what started in Jackson, Mississippi in 1996, with a bright idea, was quickly adopted by the profession and widely adopted. And so, the challenge now is not just offering flu shots, not just in the fall, but all 12 months of the year. So where are those "Get Vaccinated Here" signs in the spring and in the summer? Because those tetanus needs, those pneumococcal needs, the shingles needs are all 12 months of the year. It's not seasonal. So it's behavioral. How do we get pharmacists to be proactive? Are they tapping patients on the shoulder? I mean, I know, everybody's masked for the coronavirus stuff now. That'll pass eventually. But are they tapping patients on the shoulder to say, you're vulnerable? And so that's the U.S. The other wonderful thing is I helped, in a very small way, Canada do the same thing. And now I'm, in a variety of ways, helping the International Federation of Pharmacy, FIP, roll out or enable other countries, the pharmacy associations in other countries, to also adopt vaccinations as a routine pharmacy service.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So the next question, what advice would you give to students in their professional journey? And we're trying to develop them as leaders, obviously, to be change agents. Mm-hmm. And what kind of advice would you give them?
So the technology just keeps advancing. I was kidding people the other day that you would not trust me to fill a prescription because of the incredible number of new drugs these days. Mm-hmm. And with the pandemic, we're talking about, how many pharmacists, how do we get pharmacists training in nasopharyngeal swabbing and other things like that, point of care testing. the technology will always just keep advancing, but the human nature elements are constant. We will always have a need to explain, to persuade, to motivate, to coach. So learn both. You need to know the technology, but don't forget that human nature piece of getting adherence with whatever the medication is, of getting the good interview skills, good interaction skills of a variety of sorts. So know the science, know the molecular structures and the kinetics and the therapeutics, but be a student of human nature as well.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So one of the things that I've asked people, well, I've heard from people that I've interviewed so far is being at the right place at the right time and a little bit of luck. Do you think there was any of that? Obviously, it's 99% perspiration.
Perspiration. There's a Louis Pasteur quote of chance favors the prepared mind. Mm-hmm. That fits in with that as well. Mm-hmm. But that's human nature parts too. But what you can do in that perspiration is keep absorbing training. Give up part of a weekend. Have a routine of reading novels. One of the things I do is read biographies of historical figures. Mm-hmm. It's a 3 or 4-legged stool. You want to have your professional elements, you want to have your family life, but keep broadening yourself, keep growing, keep absorbing, keep seeking. Those are all very important things.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great comment, because in this course they're going to pick a book to read, and many of them are leadership books. Mm-hmm. But some are not. Doris Kearns Goodwin, A Leadership in Turbulent Times, her latest book, is it's on my book list for them to pick from. So it's consistent with what you're saying. Read about historical figures, how they dealt with crisis and situations. You can learn a lot by reading, obviously.
Yeah, so both within pharmacy or medicine and outside of it too. I'm thinking of Dennis Worthen's Heroes in Pharmacy series. It's a book, but it's also a set of individual stories of famous pharmacy leaders. But one of the most fascinating ones for me was the biography of Ataturk, the man who founded the modern state of Turkey, and how he was he was a pretty rough figure, but he was an advocate for women's rights, and wow. It's a fascinating story. It formed a new alphabet, and really fascinating story.
I'm going to have to purchase. I'm aware of that book, but I don't have a copy of that, and I'm putting it down because I want to get a copy of that book. Because one of the things our students will also be doing is they'll be picking one of the Harvey Whitney lectures to read, and also one of the Remington or Prescott lectures to read, and reflecting on trying to personalize what they're reading about. So that's very good. So one of the questions, I asked this question because, the nice thing about recording videos is, I can show this for a long time, and they're going to say, oh, wow, I got a chance to interview the John Grabenstein. I mean, wow. But one of the things that, I'd like to hear your insights in, we've never seen the world like this before, with this pandemic and this COVID-19 pandemic, and we're all hoping for the end to be in sight soon, but it won't be. Obviously, this is a situation unprecedented in our history, and it's required a new normal for lots of things. But it also creates an opportunity for the profession. And how do you see this pandemic creating an opportunity for the profession? And the reason I ask that question is, in 4 or 5 years from now, we'll look back as we study the decade of the 2020s, we'll say COVID-19 in 2020 and all what that meant. But we might, I believe we'll probably describe it as a turning point also in our profession. It could be a turning point in our profession. So maybe share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so what is happening is we're realizing the control that society, that payers, the insurance companies, the governments put on access to things, access to help, to an outpatient visit, voting, a variety of things. For a number of years, I've been asking rhetorically, why do we require a prescription for vaccines? What's the basis for we require a prescription for morphine or an opiate because you can hurt yourself. We require a prescription for digoxin because you can't dose it yourself. You need a learned intermediary to figure that out. And why do we require a prescription for a vaccine? You can't hurt yourself. You can't overdose on them. Okay, it's an injection, and you can anaphylax. But those are matters for quality control and quality assurance, not a physical barrier. So, and I think we're going to, what does it take to get a refill authorized? What does it take to start a therapy? Who's part of the team? Who gets access to records? We're going to confront that in a whole variety of ways right now. And about half of them will get improved, and half of them, the vested interests and the turf, is not going to enable progress. But the other half will, and I think we'll end up in a better place, maybe in some unexpected ways. But never let a crisis go to waste. Always use it to do the right thing, not because we want money or prestige or status, but because we're going to use it to improve care and help people be better. When you make that argument, you should be listened to, and you should succeed because you're doing it for somebody else's benefit, not for your own.
So, I'm sensing from your vision that you foresee a time where there won't be a prescription required for vaccines.
Well, so I think of what, as state by state, the effort and the energy that it took to get pharmacists access to, to standing orders for vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And it was just silliness that went under the guise of that we've never done it any other way, so we'll just keep doing it the way we have been doing it. And you're hearing the frustration of, come on, this is let's give the patient access to what the patient needs and remove silly barriers. I'm not advocating for OTC digoxin, or OTC morphine, but let's use our heads and do what's right for the patient.
Well, look at what's happened with the opioid crisis and Narcan. That's another example.
Narcan, sure. Narcan, epinephrine. Why is it
epinephrine? Exactly. I mean, if you look at it, the major.
I go get in line to get me a prescription. He's anaphylaxing right now. Why can't I have the epinephrine?
Exactly. So major public health crisis. That's why the promoting of pharmacists' role in public health has been so critical for our development as a profession. Right. And we've seen that in the last 10 years or so. Since the late 90s and 2000, obviously, and because those are opportunities, but there's a recognition that there doesn't have to be as many barriers.
I don't know who gets credit for getting things unfrozen on Narcan, but that's a perfect example of so many people were dying of opiate exposure, and somebody finally got disgusted and said, "Damn it, give me access to this and make that rule go away."
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's very good, John. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I thank you very much for your time.